SiriusXM keeps truck drivers informed and entertained with coast-to-coast coverage across the U.S. and Canada. Listen to what you love from anywhere on the road with 24/7 ad-free music plus sports, news, talk, and comedy. Hear your favorites on every haul for just $6.06 a month. Sign up at SiriusXMFleet.com. Welcome to The Long Haul, the podcast dedicated to empowering small carriers and owner-operators to drive their business forward. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, bringing you insights from industry leaders, real-world success stories, and strategies to help you navigate the road to profitability. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your fleet to the next level, this is the show where trucking meets opportunity. So buckle up, it's time to go the distance. Welcome back to The Long Haul, the show where we go beyond the headlines, get into the real stories, real strategies, and hear real lessons from, you got it, real people who are moving this industry forward. I'm your host, Adam Wingfield, and whether you're behind the wheel, in the office, or just trying to figure out your next move in this business, this podcast was built specifically for you. This episode is powered by our partners at SiriusXM, the platform that keeps carriers connected, informed, and entertained. Whether you're running solo or managing a growing fleet, we appreciate their support in bringing these conversations to life. Today's guest is someone that you definitely want to pay attention to. I have not crossed off the list, which I'll be crossing off the list today, of having an Amazon best-selling author on today's show. So I'm super excited to have the conversation with the CEO and best-selling author, CEO of LeadCoverage and best-selling author, Ms. Kara Brown. Ms. Kara, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam. It's a pleasure.
This is going to be a good one. It's going to be really insightful because I'm really, really inspired by looking at your work. And I want to go back a little bit, though. I want to really kind of just bring the audience up to speed to exactly who Kara is. So tell us a little bit about your journey from your humble beginnings at Echo, and walk us through that whole thing.
Yeah, so I was number 12 on the floor of Echo Global Logistics back in 2006. Yeah,
he's a starter.
I'm that old. I actually watched Doug Wagner get hired through a glass conference room wall. Yeah, I was earlier than Doug. Not a whole bunch of us that were before him. Still my best boss of all time. Huge fan of Doug. And he makes an appearance in the revenue engine, actually in the first chapter of the book. So I'm really, really blessed and honored that he would let me tell kind of our story of the beginning of Echo in the book. And yeah, so I was number 12 at Echo. Doug walked by one day, kind of my short story, and he said, "Hey, we're going to go public. Would you like to help with the S1?" And I said, "Yeah, I will Google that. And when I know what it is, I will tell you how long it will take me to get it done." I didn't have any idea what was going on. I was a kid. And those guys put a lot of faith in me, and they let me have a lot of room to run. And we got to do regulation fair disclosure and SOX compliance and all the things you have to do to take a company public. And it was an amazing opportunity. My name is on the press release of the Echo Global Logistics 2009 IPO. And then I got picked up by Seco. I was there for about 18 months. And then I spent some time at Osborne Hesse Logistics, which became Geodis. Yeah. And then I did a capital raise for a garbage company, not at all in freight. Took a little side trip down waste management. Not my jam. Came back to my first love, which is freight. I love everything about this supply chain ecosystem. There's something really tangible about this industry is based on real American dreams, right? Like we are physically moving things. I have a dear, dear friend who is an incredible chief revenue officer. She's an amazing woman in business, but she makes software to make tech demos better. And I'm like, that's just vapor, selling vapor, right? Like I like being in an industry that is based on real human capital and based on really moving goods. And it's part of what keeps me in the space. So yeah, that's my background.
Take me a little bit back before Echo. What got you into this industry? Why did you say, "Oh yeah, you know what? I think trucking is really, really cool. I want to go ahead and jump into that." Take me a little bit back before that.
such a funny story that you asked this, Adam. So I just talked about this earlier today with a friend. There used to be a store called the Expo Home Depot stores. So it was
I remember
Home
that.
Depot, right? This is like late 2000s-ish, maybe like right around 2000. And I loaded trucks and routed trucks for the final mile delivery of the Expo Home Depot stores just outside Chicago, like in the suburbs. And it was a college job. It was a job I had before I went back to college. And so when the Echo job came up, fast forward 4 to 5 years later, they were like, what do you know about trucks? And I was like, actually, I can drive a forklift. I'm not CDL certified, but I've loaded trucks. I've spent time with drivers. I've helped with routing. Like this was, baby stuff. But they were like, great, you know anything about moving boxes? You're in, like you're hired. And then I got sucked in, I got sucked into the whole industry. So that's really where it started.
And the crazy thing about that is that, it's one of those things that once you get diesel in your blood or you get it in your veins, it never goes away. There's something about, and I tell people about this like all the time, even now, if I go and I'm out, fueling at and I still say fueling, I've got a car and I'm still,
not getting gas.
Right. I'm not getting gas, I'm fueling, but if I might be out there, I might fuel and I just get a whiff of diesel and it just does something to you. It's just something that you stay connected with. So it's cool that you shared that. How did that experience with Echo Global, going through that whole IPO process, you talked about the compliance pieces behind it. How did that experience shape your approach to scaling businesses in freight, specifically around what you do?
It's a great question. And it's actually in the first chapter of the book. And I feel like I'm pushing it, but it's free on Spotify. So you can just listen to it for free. You don't have to buy it. There was a moment in the very early days of Echo. I called all of the executives to a meeting and I wanted to show them my cool work. And at the time, all I knew how to do was logos and, advertising. Like I was a child and I didn't really know what I was doing. And so I invited all these executives into the room and I had them look at my logo and my taglines. And one of the executives stood up and he said, "This is a total waste of time. Don't ever call a meeting like this ever again. You're done. Like, we're done with this conversation," and kind of walked out of the room. And what I realized was he didn't want me to give him a color palette, right? I was the marketing girl, but he didn't want me to give him a color palette. He didn't really want me to give him new logos or taglines because logos and taglines don't drive revenue. He wanted me to join them at the table where they were having material conversations about where the revenue comes from. And I didn't realize it until probably years later that that's actually what he was telling me to do, was get up there and figure out how we drive revenue in this brand new startup tech-enabled freight brokerage. Why us and not another broker? Why are we special? How do we communicate that to our customers? And I didn't know that's what he was asking for until a little later. And I have spent the better part of 20 years trying to prove to that executive that I belong at that table. Like that is really the whole basis for the business.
Wow.
How do you take the best of what SaaS is doing? So this is fintech, edtech, martech. And how do we apply that to the freight brokerage and the carrier community? So how do we take the best of what is happening in these tech-enabled spaces, and how do we apply it to the businesses that you and I know so well?
The thing is that instead of, trying to find a seat at the table, you decided to go build your own table with your own seats, your own cushions, the whole nine. After Echo, you founded LeadCoverage, which is focused on business-to-business marketing for supply chain companies. What gaps did you see in the industry that led you to start that venture itself?
It's interesting. I would love to tell you, Adam, that it was some grand plan and that I was really strategic about starting this business and I saw a gap in the marketplace that I could go fill. The real story is I got fired a lot. And I realized fired and laid off, same thing. And I realized my husband actually told me, maybe you just don't belong playing in other people's sandboxes. Maybe you need to make your own sandbox. And there was a little piece of me also in these jobs that weren't quite a fit, was that I really wanted to apply what I had learned to revenue. And I wanted to help these companies take their marketing and turn it into revenue. So instead of it just being the website or your brand or the colors that people see when you wear your shirt, how does that turn into revenue? And in the roles that I had been in before, it was really hard to do that. So when I created my own sandbox, I really spent the better part of 15 years developing a framework and actual strategies to do just that. And so that's what we do every day, all day.
You know, when I look at your book, The Revenue Engine, it outlines a framework, and I might have got this a little wrong, but share good news, track interest, follow up is
Got it
really.
right.
Can you break down how that applies to small carriers? I'm an owner operator with one truck, or I'm a small family fleet owner with 5 trucks. Can you break down how that applies to small carriers looking to grow their business as well?
Yes. So the same philosophy and strategy applies whether you have one truck or you are C.H. Robinson. Sharing the good news about your business and specifically what it is that you do better or different than the folks that you compete with, right? So finding your specific value proposition and then sharing it with your marketplace. We have a very specific point of view on your marketplace, Adam. So we believe that if you have what you call a finite or a finished total addressable market, so an infinite addressable market would be smart water, right? Or
Yeah.
Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Anyone who drinks a liquid, right? That is not what we're talking about. So if you have a finite market, you should own the email address of every human who can buy from you in that market. And this is true if you have 2 trucks and you only do hot shots out of Memphis, or if you are, Werner Freight and you are servicing giant shippers. There is a finite total addressable market that you can serve, and you should own the email address of every human who can buy from you. The second piece of the revenue engine is tracking the interest. If you have HubSpot, it's almost free. Sometimes it can be free depending on how small you are. As long as you have a HubSpot connected to your website, everyone has a website, there is a thing called primary intent. So Adam is in my CRM. The minute you hit my website, I saw you were on my website, right? That is primary intent. If the only thing you do is put in the 60 to 250 email addresses that can buy from you, and you wait for them to show up, then you follow up as fast as humanly possible, right? Make that phone call the minute they hit your website, and you solve the problem for them. So whether you have 15 trucks in Memphis and you're looking for the next hot shot or the next just in time or the next hub and spoke that you're looking for, right? Or the next load you're looking for, put those email addresses inside your HubSpot, see when they come to find you, track that activity, and then follow up as fast as humanly possible.
You know, you emphasize that important component of tracking and emphasizing the importance of tracking that interest and the consistent follow up. And you hear it all the time. The fortune is in the follow up. For a small carrier, what tools outside of HubSpot, like, hey, you know what, maybe a CRM might be a little bit more complex. You know, what other tools or methods would you recommend to effectively implement that?
So I like the HubSpot tool because it's pretty intuitive and it is relatively inexpensive. There are probably other tools you can use that will feel very similar to HubSpot.
Sure.
Another tool that we like a lot is Carrier Source. I think what Rob Light is building at Carrier Source is really smart. And I think he's got really good shippers coming to Carrier Source. He's got a really good niche. Other than that, the tools that are coming out that are being democratized. So if you think about really expensive tools that are getting cheaper over time, are these like automatic calling tools, right? I would love to see small shippers take advantage of the AI products that you and I see every day, all day in our work, right? That why can't a small carrier have access to their own AI agent that makes those calls for them? So I I have a funny thing that I'm eventually gonna put this on LinkedIn. I think there are these like AI bros kind of everywhere right now. Like teams of AI bros like that exist in the world. Even if you're a small carrier, there is an AI tool that can connect into these things to make this really easy for you. So it takes a little bit of time. Finding the right tool, I think, is important. But I don't think there's any reason why the small carriers can't use some of these, specifically the auto dialer tools, right? Like just have someone make a call for you, have them patch it through to your phone, et cetera.
You know, most small carriers, and let me take out the word most and I'll use many because that's not fair to say that. Many small carriers, many owner operators, many fleet owners, you'll be surprised that don't have websites, they don't have logos. So a lot of times small carriers think that marketing is just for, you mentioned CH Robinson, the Echoes, the JB Hunts. How can a one truck or two truck operations effectively market themselves without that large budget? Yeah, what are some of the things that they can do that can really kind of be effective when it comes down to it?
Yeah, I really think if you have identified the brokers and shippers that you want to work for in your geographic market, right? So Zoom Info will give you a free trial so you can get into Zoom Info and pull the email addresses of the companies that are in your geographic location. You can get this from Apollo or Lead Feeder. There's a whole bunch of free or almost free tools out there. But again, even if we're working with one of the big carriers or brokers, we are still talking about ideal customer profile. So you need to think deeply as a small owner operator about exactly the type of freight and the type of company that you want to work for and what you want to haul, right? And we all know that there's good freight and bad freight. So identifying the shippers and the brokers that are in your geographic area that are going to hire you to ship the sort of freight that you want to ship is worth spending a couple of days doing, right? Or hiring a kid out of college to help you do this. And so finding those email addresses and identifying exactly who you want to get in front of, taking the power back, Adam. So you take the power and say, these are the companies I want to work with. I'm telling them that I want to work with them. I know they have the kind of freight that I want to ship, and I know that I'm a good carrier and I'm going to work hard for this customer. That is the position to be in versus, waiting for someone to come to me or getting loads off of a load board.
You made such a great point too, especially when we talk about the geographic area. And one of the things that, within Playbook, we're really focused on teaching the community to make sure they focus on what we call the green mile, which is that area that you operate within a 20-mile radius of your home address or where you park your trucks. And once you exhaust that 20 miles, you open it up a little further. You go to 25 miles and you go to 30 miles. But one of the things that I'm really big on is that I feel that there has to be a home field advantage when it comes down to that. And what I mean by that, Carrier, is if I'm in, Alcaloo, South Carolina, which is my hometown, and I see a truck at a shipper that's not a mega carrier, that's, a small mom and pop, company, and they're loading, then I'm going to be upset about that because, that's not me getting out and doing the things that I need to do because that shipper should provide me with that first right of refusal. If that's my marketplace, if that's my lane, like you mentioned, you said, hey, look for the ones that you want to do business with that haul the commodities that ship the commodities that you haul. So I think that's so profound what you said that, and I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because this is one of those conversations that doesn't take place enough when it comes down to that. You mentioned in your book random acts of marketing. What are some common mistakes carriers make in their marketing efforts, and how can they avoid them?
It's a really good question. My first comment on what not to do would be to spend money on Google or Facebook advertising. There is very little, if any, ROI for small carriers to be spending advertising dollars with any of the advertising or any of the digital marketing, digital media, I should say. And so that's probably the first mistake. The second mistake, Adam, and this is a little controversial, I got a little bit in trouble for posting this to LinkedIn. People were a little mad at me. Is you don't have to pay for content anymore. So if you are going to send email, so let's just say that you have, I don't know, 25 trucks and you have a kid that you're going to hire for the summer who's going to help you get in front of shippers and brokers that you want to haul for. And they're going to write some emails for you to send out to introduce yourself to these shippers and brokers. You don't have to pay someone to write that anymore. ChatGPT will write the content for you, right? They'll put this entire strategy together for you, right? We actually have a ChatGPT of the revenue engine book. So you can go to the LeadCoverage website or the book website, and there is actually a place where you can just type in like, hey, how should I write this email? And it'll spit it out for you. So the second piece of advice I have is don't pay for content. So if you are going to start to do some marketing, if you're going to put a website together, if you're going to put something on Facebook or LinkedIn, etc., don't pay for content. Don't pay anyone to do it because it's now 100% free on ChatGPT.
That's crazy too. You talked about the importance of the website. Like, you can get a website builder these days, like through Squarespace or GoDaddy or Wix, and it can literally build their AI engines that are in them that help you build the website. So really there's no excuse for not having that marketing component, but it's just with all of the things that swirl around being a business owner, it's almost like you have to just say, hey, you know what, which fire am I going to put out first? And is it really important to put that fire out? Intent data is a buzzword that is being used in like marketing circles and things of that nature. How can small carriers utilize intent data to identify potential clients, shippers or brokers that might be interested in their services that don't know what intent data is?
So intent data is an awesome topic, and I'm so glad you asked because I talk about it all the time. For this specific market, so for the small carrier that we're talking about today, for the independent driver, I would recommend starting with a carrier source. So there's really two places for this particular audience to get intent data to put it into their processes for driving more opportunities. One is your primary intent, which comes out of a HubSpot or another CRM that shows individuals that are coming to you that want to use you. And then two is the opportunity to work with like a carrier source where Rob Light, who's the CEO over there, you can acquire your platform, your profile, and then when shippers come in, they can reach out to you directly. But in terms of intent data at scale is super expensive, and it's really meant for the enterprise. And so instead of recommending to your listeners that they go out and try to understand the ins and outs of intent data, I would say start with what is existing in your CRM today and potentially reaching out to carrier source. Other than that, we're talking like big dollars, like hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this up and running. And it's kind of out of scope.
So for those that are unfamiliar, can you just quickly explain the difference between intent data and just like a traditional like shipper list or something of that matter and why it matters?
Yeah. So I'll tell you the story that I share about intent data. So this is what I say when I'm on stage at like a manifest or another big show. There will be a morning where Tim Cook will get on stage. We think it's sometime in later 2026. Tim Cook, CEO of Apple, will get on stage and he'll be doing his normal Apple dog and pony show. And he'll say, hey, by the way, we're insourcing Apple's supply chain by 2030. And all of the acronyms in freight will freak out. UPS, XPO, GXO, right? And they'll all be like, what? That decision was not made that morning by Tim Cook. He doesn't wake up that morning and think, oh, I'm going to, disrupt $1 billion of freight today. That decision was made by a Tiger team, Cupertino now, and we can see that they are searching for how to buy a fleet, how to process a hub and spoke model, LTL versus truckload. We can see these searches that this team is doing to then make the recommendation up through the Apple ecosystem. The searches inside of the Apple team is intent data. So this is basically breadcrumbs. So think of them like clues in a documentary or in a mystery, right? Like you're unraveling these clues. Here's the issue. The issue is, in order to have those clues visible, to be able to see them, you have to have enough of them to be able to identify them at scale. And that only happens inside the enterprise. So if your customers are small businesses, or if you have a small budget to be executing marketing, it's just a really expensive endeavor. But I have good news. In 2011-ish, when HubSpot started kind of de-seeding or disintermediating Salesforce, that democratization of the tools is also happening in intent data. So it probably won't happen in the next 2 to 4 years, but in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see cheaper, easier to use intent tools built specifically for our space. And we're calling that single stream intent. So long term, it's one of the things to look out for. This is a marketing 301 class,
Yeah.
Adam. We've just given your listeners like
That's all right.
really
That's
high
all
level theoretical kind of application of the go-to-market set of opportunity. But I think long term, we will start to see this be available for the small business market.
And we're looking forward to that, because the more tools that a small business owner, small businesses, it makes America go around. It spins the world on its axis. And I truly am so passionate about small businesses. And I'm also passionate about processes, systems, and then time management is another big thing. So you talked about something that was really, really interesting. And I really, really wanted to take the time and spend on it, because you talked about identifying your $10,000 an hour task and how important it is to identify those things. So walk me through that for a CEO of a small trucking company that may have 2 trucks that wears CEO, CFO, COO, Chief Marketing Officer. Oh yeah, I'm running payroll today. I'm wearing all these hats. Talk to me about those activities and what that $10,000 task means.
So I feel so much passion about this, Adam, because I also was on my own, right? In my basement, in my pajamas, 2 babies under 2, typing the invoices, sending invoices, doing the work myself. And we've scaled to, nearly a $10 million company with 50 employees. So I have 100% in there. So I think there's a fun little thing that I like to think about, kind of an adage, if you will, 4 types of hours. You have 10, 100, 1,000, and $10,000 hours every day. And it's your job as the CEO to free yourself up for the $10,000 hour. So that means getting rid of or delegating any task that's a $10 task. So this is like writing invoices, checking in on insurance, like doing kind of all of the things that are day-to-day task oriented, getting those off into someone else's hands that you trust so that you can free yourself up for the $10,000 hour.
The crazy thing is that a lot of times when you look at it, being a solopreneur, it's almost like, well, who am I going to be able to delegate this time out to? Where am I going to find that extra payroll amount that I'm able to do that? And you find that as more of a distractive, I guess we want to call that a distractive fallback. Because one of the things that in my journey that I learned, that I looked at payroll more as an investment to free me up for more time. So when I really truly understood that importance, that's when things took off for me.
I totally agree with that philosophy, that if I'm investing in the processes to get the $10 task off my plate, that it will then free me up for the next $10,000 hour. So you and I have talked about some pretty high level marketing kind of activities or things to put, if you're a small carrier, to put yourself in the position to get more loads and to be visible to carriers and to brokers or shippers. And I think it can feel overwhelming, because if all the other hats you're wearing are taking all of your time, right? This could be a good goal for someone who's listening today. Say, hey, I'm going to delegate, I don't know, sending invoices or, or double checking on insurance. I'm just going to send that to someone else to get that done. And I'm going to double down on doing what this Kara lady says and identify the shippers that I want to work for and the brokers that I want to haul for. And I'm going to spend like 3 days on that, because theoretically that could be a $10,000 hour. Like that hour that
100%.
you spend pulling those names and making sure that you're identifying the right people that you want to haul for, that could end up being a $10,000 hour. And I think I connect deeply with what you said, that if you can change your philosophy or change your mindset into that is actually an investment in future me, then it changes the way that you behave and the investments that you make in yourself. And I find this in education. I joined a community of entrepreneurs, and I now go to like crazy places like Harvard and Oxford and MIT and do these kind of executive learning opportunities. And it can be a lot to step away from the business for 3 or 4 days at a time. That's a lot of trust to put into your team to make sure that they're doing things right. And so as I've scaled the business, we've been doing this longer and longer. We've been at this almost 10 years now. Now I can take 3 or 4 days away, but I don't take 3 or 4 days away to go sit on the beach. I take 3 or 4 days away to go to school, right? And then I bring that value back into the business. And one of the things that came out of one of those beats of education is actually the book. And so the book is The Revenue Engine. Like I said earlier, it's available on Spotify, so you can just listen to it. And when I went to Harvard, I learned this framework that every case study that we solved at Harvard had a framework behind it, which is where we came up with share good news, track interest, follow up. And so the value that created then became a book. And the book we sent to pretty much every executive in supply chain.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I'm here talking to you about the book is because I took the time away from the business to invest in myself, to then come up with something that became much, much more than a $10,000 hour, right? This book will turn into millions in revenue for us.
You know, the thing about it, you mentioned frameworks, and frameworks is something that, I'm a big, huge Donald Miller fan. And Donald Miller, who wrote Business Made Simple, he talks about frameworks and he talks about those processes and things of that nature. And what really drew me to your book, just like his book, is that it's applicable in no matter what you do. I don't care if you run a lemonade stand, run a trucking company, it doesn't matter. Those same principles fall in. You just made something as a comment just a few minutes ago that was so important that I didn't want to go over people's head. You said, you know what? When I take time outside of the business, it's not just all about beaches, but it's all also about continuous education. One of the things that we as CEOs and leaders, whether you're the CEO of ABC Trucking or the CEO of Bell's Trucking, which is a 2-truck operation, the thing that we don't have is we don't have that level of accountability where in corporate America, you got ongoing training and continuous education and things of that nature. But as a CEO, who's telling you that you need to go get more education? Who's telling you to go take these classes so that way you can delegate better or you can do better at time management? Or maybe you're taking situational leadership classes and learning on how to deal with different circumstances because you have a driver recruitment issue. So I thought you hit a lot in just a little bit. And I just wanted to make sure that I kind of just connected the dots because there was a lot of game that you just gave.
I'm so glad. Thank you. I think someone told me a long time ago that your business can only scale, a founder-led business can only scale to how much the founder grows as a human. So I have taken that to heart ever since my early days, right? As I grow, Kara Brown in 2025 is very different than Kara Brown from 2017 when I started, right? The person in 2017 would be solving problems very differently, much more poorly, I believe, because I like to believe that I've grown in my ability to solve problems and be a little more even keel. I used to run super hot, yell at people a lot, and now I'm, hey, we can solve this problem. It's a teachable moment, etc. And I think executive coaching has done wonders for me. Back to Doug Wagner, actually, this is a funny story. I don't usually share this, but when I was in my 20s working for Doug, he had an executive coach. And I had never seen an executive I don't know, with be humble enough to be coached.
Mm-hmm.
And it blew me away in my 20s. Now that I'm an executive myself and I've had many coaches and I think coaches are awesome, I have a different perspective. But back then I was like, wow, this guy spends time away from the office just being coached by someone who is ahead of him in his career. And to me at the time in my 20s, he was the pinnacle of success, right? He was still great. But the idea of looking to your peers that are ahead of you or in front of you, people that you admire, everyone loves to be asked, right? To be a mentor or to be someone, can I call you when I have a challenge? And I think a lot of times people miss that opportunity. And this isn't a call about mentorship, but more the idea that you as the entrepreneur are responsible for your own growth. And I love what you said. No one is going to tell you what your next growth needs to be when you're the CEO. Maybe your team, if you have a good team, sometimes they'll tell you. My husband is my chief operating officer. He loves to tell me what I have to work on. But so
some get back right there.
Yeah, exactly. Who will be honest with you maybe about what your gaps are. Then you can go find programs and opportunities to fill those gaps. And I truly believe that those become $10,000 hours.
You know, as an entrepreneur, as a fellow entrepreneur, you scaled your business 7, 8 figures. What advice, and you know, before I ask for the advice part, what would you say to maybe folks that are listening that may say, oh, well, she got lucky, or maybe she had a team of people that were just pouring money into her. That's the only reason why she's successful. What would you say to inspire those that may not know that the journey of the basement with the 2 under 2s and the, hey, I'm handwritten set? What would you say about that?
It's an interesting question. Mostly because I'm a woman in freight. So for people that are like, oh, it's been easy for you, or you haven't, like I'm a super normal girl, Adam. Like I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I went to a state school for college. I wasn't particularly like gifted in any way. Not particularly beautiful. Like I don't have like extra skills that would make me. So I think what really matters is showing up. Just showing up every single day. It didn't come up with a silver spoon. I had to show up every day. And I think the other piece for folks that maybe are inside of a company and not leading a company is put your hand up. Be willing to say yes to the next thing. Be willing to take a little bit of risk. Be willing to put yourself out there. But most importantly for entrepreneurs is just keep showing up, right? Take the hits, learn the lesson, invest in yourself, and keep showing up. So I actually would love to have a conversation with someone who was like, you had it easy, because it would be really fun to tell them all the times that I failed.
No, you know, a lot of times it's easier to look on the outside and be able to say, oh, well, I bet you this is why, or I bet you that is why. And a lot of times people will be very, very I guess surprised to see that a lot of successes from a lot of the most successful folks were just the humble beginnings, the one that didn't want to give up, the ones that were different. One thing I can tell you is like you have to be a little bit crazy to be an entrepreneur, like a little bit. Like you can't be normal. You know, you can't be an entrepreneur and have that normalcy. That it's just something about us that makes it very, very different. And you know, also too, Kara, a trucking entrepreneur, you got to be even more crazy. The amount of things that you deal with as a trucking entrepreneur on a day-to-day basis. You know, the way that a lot of owner operators, the way that they're treated. You know, it's just a lot of things that are going on. So it does take a little bit of insanity in order to keep going. For carriers that feel overwhelmed by everything that they're doing, including marketing and including picking up a phone call and, hey, I got to do some outreach so I can start looking for direct shippers. What is one simple step that they can take today to start moving their business in the right direction?
I think the first thing that anyone that owns a small trucking company should do is identify the fancy word for it is your ideal customer profile, right? The basic word is take your perfect customer, identify what about them makes them perfect, and go find 25 more that look just like them in the same geography, that ship a similar type of good, that have a similar company type, and they exist. I think that it's an easy trap to get into that, oh, I don't know how to find these companies, but LinkedIn will tell you, Lead Data will tell you, Zoom Info will tell you, shoot, the Better Business Bureau will tell you, right? And then go and acquire those email addresses. I think that's number one, is identify exactly who you want to get in front of, and then go buy and just buy them. Just buy the email addresses of the humans that will make that decision, and start to track whether or not they even know who you are. So I think you asked me for one thing, I give you three things. So the one thing is really identify your perfect customer, identify the characteristics that make them perfect for you, which will be different from another company or another carrier, and then repeat that times 25 or 50 or 100. And get that list of perfect customers. There's something to be said, I think, Adam, for if I am a shipper and a carrier came to me and they said, I ship for these 3 other companies that look just like you. That means I understand your time specifics. I understand exactly how to haul your freight. I understand exactly where your DC situations are. Like, if you can come to a shipper and clearly share with them why they are your ideal customer profile, that's appreciated, right? Like, okay, great. You actually know a little bit about what we do and you've done some research. We'll give you a shot, right? Versus kind of anybody in the space or picking up a load off a load board. So I think the first thing I would do is identify your perfect customer, what makes them a perfect customer, and finding 25 to 100 more.
No, that's actually that's just rinse. What is it? Wash, rinse, repeat. Wash, rinse,
Yeah.
repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. It's just one of those things that once you do one thing the right the first time, just continue to recycle that. Man, it's been an awesome conversation. I could talk marketing and business growth strategies all day long, because I think it's really important. But for our listeners that want to learn more about lead coverage and exactly what Carrier does, and be able to access resources to help their business grows, how can they learn more about you and your business?
So I am prolific on LinkedIn. You are welcome.
Prolific.
Prolific. I post every single day. I'm one of the original supply chain kind of influencers. So follow me on LinkedIn. But I really do think there's value in, if you have questions about go-to-market or marketing in supply chain specifically, that the book is free on Spotify. I think it's $20 on Amazon, and it's a pretty good read. And the case studies in the book are all related to supply chain. So they're not specifically for small carriers, but they're all in our industry, right? And so the book is a really good kind of easy read, about 250 pages. There's some funny stories in it. I think it's relatively interesting. And then you can find us at leadcoverage.com, and we're happy to have conversations with anyone in logistics and transportation who's interested in letting door.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom today. For small carriers and owner operators that are listening to this show today, we covered so much in a short period of time. Everything from, hey, what does a good lead look like as far as a shipper is concerned, to what follow-up mechanism you should use, from whether it be a CRM system. Then we talked about those $10, $100, and $10,000 an hour tasks. And we talked about how it's important to put those in the right buckets. And we talked about strategies on how to utilize yourself best as a person when it comes down to being a better entrepreneur yourself. So thank you so much for joining us today in that episode, Kara. And please, everyone, if you haven't checked out her content on LinkedIn, please make sure that you do so. And then grab that book. It's one of those books that transcend no matter what you do. But like I said, I think it's really, really profound what you did, and really love seeing the journey. So thank you for spending the time with us today.
Thank you.
So everybody, thank you for another great episode. Lots to learn. We're continuously on that learning journey, and I could love to continue to move that journey down the road with you. Until next week, be safe, be profitable, and until the next time, take care.